voting.
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct. Yeah, we have a quorum tonight. It is 7 o'clock and we're all in attendance, so we're gonna start the meeting. I've begun recording and hi, Maria. I just haven't said hi yet. How are you?
Pretty good. How are you?
Good.
How is
Excellent.
everyone?
We're good. We're good. So we're calling to order at 7. And we're going to start with our first item of business, which is welcoming our 2 new alternates, Liz Thomas and Liz Garner. Liz Garner is not able to be here tonight. However, I believe she'll be at our next meeting. And Liz, welcome on behalf of myself and the rest of the board. We're excited to have you here.
Yeah, I'm excited to be part of a littler part of state or of local government. Yeah, not such a big part, but yeah.
So Pete, are you going to seat Liz for tonight? Looks like there's a spot for her to be a voting member.
Let's see. Well, we've got John, Mo, Rod. I mean, we're all here, John. I guess.
All 5 of us?
Yeah.
Oh, I only see 4 of us.
Rodney.
Who's invisible?
I will have to recuse myself on one of the items because I am a neighbor of the applicant.
You're the
So you have enough people though.
Rodney, Rebecca, Mo.
Mhm.
I think we have everybody.
Yeah, I think we're good. Has everybody had a chance to review the agenda? I would take a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Yep.
Second.
All in favor of approving tonight's agenda?
Aye.
Aye.
Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes of the April 5th meeting?
No.
Okay. Have some of you had a chance to review the minutes of the April 5th meeting?
I probably did, but that was so long ago.
Okay. I would accept a motion to approve the minutes of the April 5th meeting that Maria had provided to us.
I'll make a
I'll
motion.
I'll second.
I'll third.
All right.
Okay,
All in favor of approving the minutes from April 5th?
Aye.
Aye.
So we have quite the agenda before us tonight, and quite the full house too. And our next item of business is privilege of the floor. And this is a chance for anybody in the public to speak to the planning board. And just of note, we are going to go through each one of the agenda items and give the applicants a chance to speak. And we'll be asking them questions when they present. So are there any members of the public present that would like to speak at privilege of the floor? This could be about any topic. Okay. And we'll close privilege of the floor.
make a motion to close the privilege.
I'd accept them. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Second.
I have a question about the agenda. I'm a little confused about item number 5 on the agenda. Under action, it says public hearing, seeker determination, minor subdivision review. What does that all mean?
Item 5, minor subdivision.
Yeah. Is it that we're going to plan for a public hearing?
No, no,
Okay.
we are reviewing. Thank you, John. Basically, we're reviewing this minor subdivision and can vote to approve it or turn it down. Minor subdivision review, and the public hearing will be part of this review.
The public hearing will be
Part of the review,
as part of our review tonight.
as in tonight. Yeah, for this, not for not for the McKeel Road, but for the 6016 Willow Creek Road. Yeah, that is correct.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, yeah, so I just wanted to make a, all in favor of, we had two motions to close privilege of the floor. All in favor of closing privilege of the floor.
Aye.
Hi.
So I'd like to move on to 6016 Willow Creek Road. This is a minor subdivision. And I'd like the applicant, if present, Elsie Ness, to have a chance to tell us about her application. Elsie, are you present?
Excuse me, Pete, I have to recuse myself from this one.
Okay.
This is my neighbor,
Okay.
okay?
Yeah, hi, this is Joyce. Her daughter Elsie is deceased,
Oh, I'm
And
sorry.
I'm-
Yes.
and I'm
I apologize.
inheriting the house and the
Right.
7 acres, and we just want to split it off from the rest of the land.
Right.
And my daughter's gonna eventually buy the rest of the land.
Okay. So just to review and just to confirm that I have everything right, you have currently a 94-acre parcel, and you are seeking to subdivide off 7 acres of that parcel, creating 2 tax parcels. Correct?
Right,
Okay. This one is a little bit, just slightly different because that large parcel that you're going to, have when you take off the 7 acres is actually in 3 different sections. It's divided by Willow Creek Road, as well as the Black Diamond Trail.
Right.
However, that section, those 3 sections are going to be, they're all going to remain as 1 tax parcel.
right.
Just want to make sure that, yep, okay.
Right.
All right. And I did see in your map that you have a note in there that's saying it's 1 tax parcel. And there are some connecting lines that sort of visually tie it together on the map.
Right.
Right.
I don't quite understand that. I know what the parcel looks like. Are you saying that it's still going to be connected to the larger parcel across the road? In other words, it's labeled B2 on the map we have, and the other side of the road is B1. I would have assumed that it's a subdivision and we're parceling off that square chunk of land. It's
Yeah,
not remaining.
Anything that's labeled the B is gonna remain with the larger parcel of the land. So the surveyor labeled it like B1, B2, B3, which is confusing. We tried to have him have like a note in there just saying he numbered them because of the parcel laying out of like the road and the Black Diamond Trail. But the minor subdivision will be on the map where it's called parcel A. And that's just gonna section out the house, the barn, the pond, and then the acres that it easily is divided off from the larger land.
So the A is being taken away from all the Bs.
Correct.
Right.
I misunderstood. I thought I would, that's why the public hearing sign is by the houses and not by the field.
Correct. Yeah.
I'm catching up with you.
Yeah, it's confusing, but yeah. So we have to divide it so that the inheritance can proceed accordingly. Yeah.
No problem.
Mhm.
Let's move it.
Thank you. That'd be nice.
Did any members of the board have any questions for Joyce or her daughter?
I do. I have a comment. All right, so
Yeah.
guys, nice job presenting the materials. In particular, the aerial imagery with the parcel layout and the topographic lines was all really good at providing the information I needed to analyze what you were doing. It all makes sense and I get the logic, so I'm comfortable with what you've presented. So thank you very much. It was nice to have all the material so clearly laid out.
Okay, thank you. Yes. We worried over that.
Any other comments from the board before we open the public hearing portion of this?
I just have a question. When you get to the seeker part, I had a couple questions on seeker, so I don't know when is appropriate to ask
That would
it.
be great, Liz. Yeah.
Okay, I mean, one of the, on number 11, it said that will the proposed action connect to the existing wastewater utilities? And I would think that would have been no, but it's checked as yes. And I would think it says, if no, describe the method for providing wastewater treatment. I mean, I would guess that would say there's no building there. So that was just one comment. And the other was on,
Could I address that comment?
sure, yeah.
I think that, and Joyce, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the portion being subdivided is that lot A. So there's already a house there. So there's
Right,
already a
right.
septic.
Septic,
Correct.
And
Okay.
the rest is agricultural.
oh, yeah.
All right. Oh, sorry, dog. The other question was about, on 15, does the site of the proposed action contain any species or animals associated with habitats listed by the state or federal government as threatened? And it does say Lake Sturgeon, which puzzled me a little bit because it's not so close to the lake.
Yeah, that's something that pre-populates when you do it on the EPA website.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, and I see from our EAF mapper report that they do list Lake Sturgeon there, which is interesting. Because yeah, you're quite a ways up from the lake.
Yeah,
Like I said, let's move it.
Okay. I'd like to now open up the public hearing portion of this minor subdivision. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak towards this minor subdivision? And if so, please identify your full name for the record. If there are no members of the public that would like to speak towards this, then I would accept a motion to close the public hearing period for 6016 Willow Creek Road.
Make the motion.
Did I get a second?
Whatever.
Yes.
Is that a yes, John?
Yes.
Thank you. All in favor of closing the public hearing portion of this application? Aye.
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 All right. Have people had a chance to review the resolution that I had emailed? I only sent it about an hour ago.
It's it.
You didn't see it? Okay. If you'd like, I can, so I'm not gonna, if people want to check their email, you'll see it in there.
Yes.
People want to just take a moment to review that. Do you see that as well, Liz? Did I include you on that email?
I actually did not print off the short environmental form. I'm assuming that there's nothing on there that should raise any issues.
John, if you'd like, I could screen share. Would you like me to do that?
I don't
I don't have
personally.
it at all.
So you
I
don't
didn't get
have-
it. You sent me
didn't-
an additional speed checks for spec sheets for McKeel Road and you sent me a additional application for the McKeel Road. I don't have anything else from you.
So
Several
what,
from,
where you should be looking in your email is it's the 27th, April 27th from John Zepko, where he sent the Dropbox
Okay,
that has the application material. So wait, are you looking for the short environmental assessment, Rebecca?
no, the resolution you said you sent
Okay, yeah,
today.
so I emailed the resolution, it's separate, and I emailed that only at about 6 o'clock tonight.
Okay,
But if you would like, I can,
wait, I
yeah,
see it in clutter. Okay, thanks, got it.
yeah, in clutter, okay.
I have it.
You have it, John?
Yes, I do.
Okay, excellent. I'm gonna read the bottom of the resolution. And then I'll accept any comments on it prior to a vote. Now therefore be it resolved, after careful consideration and evaluation of the possible environmental impacts, the Town of Ulysses Planning Board hereby determines a proposed minor subdivision of 6016 Willow Creek Road will not have a significant adverse impact on the environment or the Town of Ulysses, and issues a negative determination of environmental significance in accordance with New York State Environmental Quality Review Act for the above reference action as proposed, and therefore an environmental impact statement will not be required. And that the Planning Board of the Town of Ulysses hereby grants minor subdivision approval for the subdivision of the existing 94-acre parcel located at 6016 Willow Creek Road, tax map 193-25.2, into two parcels, parcel A of 7.752 acres and parcel B of 86.192 acres, as shown on the application materials.
So if you're making that as a resolution, I'll second it, or otherwise I will make that as a resolution.
All right, John makes that resolution. Can we have a second?
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Aye. All right, the resolution is passed. Thank you. Joyce, we appreciate you coming to join us tonight, and you're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting. However, that concludes your
Okay,
portion here.
thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep, thank you. All right.
Peter, I'm back on the board.
All right, thank you. Good to have you back.
And I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure of protocol here. I'm used to having a move and then a second and then a discussion, and there was
Oh,
one more
You are
question
correct.
we had,
You are correct, Liz. Yeah.
which is not a big deal, but on the minor subdivision agricultural data sheet, there it says proposed use residential. I think this might be a mistake. It says residential, single family, and then it says commercial. So I doubt it's commercial. I'm guessing it's agricultural, that the boxes are kind of weirdly spaced right next to each other. But we weren't just, I mean, it doesn't really matter, I guess. But I just wanted to note that was in there, and it's a little bit strange.
Okay, okay. In the data sheet, the ag data sheet. Okay.
Yeah, it's like maybe, I don't know, 10 lines down. It's the proposed use, residential single family, and then it's residential multifamily, and then agricultural, and then, so maybe,
The check mark is after the agriculture and
Okay.
after single
Okay.
family residence.
okay, I have it wrong.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah,
all
yeah,
make
yeah.
mistakes.
Okay, thank you.
Alright,
Thank you
alright.
thank you for your tolerance.
Yeah, and also thank you, Liz, for reminding us of the discussion. I mentioned it and then just went right for the vote. All right, are we ready to move on? Site plan review. This is for 3250 McKeel Road, and for this we'll review the materials and we'll schedule a public hearing for a later date. And I believe that we have some people here that are representing the applicant, which is Crown Castle. And I'd like to give you a chance to tell us about your application. And please identify your first and last name for the record.
Good evening. My name is Colin Robinson of Network Building and Consulting. I'm here on behalf of Crown Castle and T-Mobile. The proposed wireless installation would add 9 antennas and related equipment to the existing guide tower at 3250 McKeel Road. And we worked with John Zepka to complete the application, and appreciate his help, and believe it's a complete application to move forward. I would welcome any questions about it.
Yes. We were given a whole batch of very technical drawings, which made my head whirl. My real simple question is the tower going to be any higher than it is now?
No. So so we included spec sheets and a lot of technical information. But if you have the construction drawings on page C2, you can see that there are 2 existing arrays, and then below that array is the proposed T-Mobile equipment with a center line of 163 feet. So below the existing top of the tower at 190.
So there's no change to the height of the tower?
Correct.
Thank you.
I have a question. I'm glad to hear that, first of all. Thanks, John, for asking it, because when we originally approved that tower, it was a lot of attention was paid to making sure it wasn't too tall and impacting the landscape. Some of the documents say 6 antenna. You mentioned 9, and the only other place I saw 9 was in the document we got from somebody named Ford today, who approved something. I can go find it. So is it 6 or 9, and why do we have a bunch of documents saying 6 antennas?
The CDs show 9 antennas. I was looking at the short form environmental, and I do see it says 6.
Yeah, let me find the other ones too. A lot of them do. Anyway. So which is it? And why has it changed? And you're just, is that the point? It's changed, or?
It's a good question. So, I mean, the construction drawings showed 9. So it should be 9. The photo simulations show 3 per sector. So it'd be 9.
Okay, so it's just an error where they say 6. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if T-Mobile updated their application with Crown, or it could have just been a typo, and the person who filled it out had worked on one that did 6 for the last site. But construction drawings show 9. It's 6 radios, so we should be requesting 3 per sector, 9.
Okay.
So the major change is it's going to look lumpier. Is that right?
I don't know if I don't know if I could speak to it saying lumpier. There'll be 3 more antennas per sector, so it'll look similar to how it looks with 1 more array. So there's 2 there, and there'll be a 3rd below.
I have a question. Peter, did anybody read the site plan, the notice of eligible facilities request? Has anybody read that? Where it says, "Dear John," and then it goes on? Because you're talking about having a public meeting.
To schedule a public hearing at a future date.
Well, I really would like to have somebody go through this, because here it says, once the application was admitted, we have 30 and 60-day deadline begins.
Right.
And it says here that the application was done by April 15th. So it has to be, the approval is May 15th.
No, Rodney, Mo, I'm sorry. Mo, we would be accepting the application tonight.
Well, it says here, once the application was sent to, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but what I got from it, once Mark accepted it, which was dated March 16th, and it goes on, but what it says is the approval has to be by May 15th. I think we should really read this. And
what is it that you're referring to?
This is the site plan. Look under site plan. the tab that says site plan, it says notice of eligible facilities request. And then it says, Dear John, and it goes, there's about a paragraph of it.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure what this says, if I'm reading it wrong or not, but I think we should discuss that, because if it says we have to do something by April 15th, May 15th, what does that mean?
Where are you seeing it? I mean, basically what?
It's a letter.
what
It's a
I-
letter to John
I
from
see the
Crown
letter.
Castle.
No, I
What
see the letter.
page?
I see
What
the letter.
page
No,
is
I
it?
got the page. I mean, I'm reading the letter, but what,
It says
what I
section
understand
6409.
is that we're looking at this application and deciding if it's complete and deciding whether or not to accept it, in which case that would then start the clock. I mean, that's my understanding.
It says here, it says the FCC has clarified that the 30 and 60-day deadline begins when the applicant takes the first step required under state or local law
I see.
and submits information. So
Mm.
it's sort of like a little strange. I don't understand, because it
Yeah.
says it was dated March 16th and
Right.
it was acknowledged by March 30th via email.
Huh.
So it says the enclosed items, the 30 and 60-day review period have started. Based on this filing, the deadline for written notice, April 15th. The deadline for approval is May 15th. So having a public meeting now is sort of useless.
Right,
Right.
John-
We can
Mo,
schedule
just so
that
you
out.
know, I'm gonna
Yeah.
say it's incomplete because I'm gonna point out several locations where it says 6 antennae. And I don't think it's right to have an incorrect application, and those forms need to be corrected.
I
So
agree.
there's
I
with
at
know, but
that.
it says that Mark accepted it. Not us. Mark Washburn accepted it. That's what it says in this particular letter.
Yeah, I see that. I see that.
I think we're in this, I think we're in the sketch plan stage. And what I haven't seen the letter that is being referred to, but it's, the timing starts after the planning board has gotten involved, not,
Not according to this.
No, but honestly, I don't know. I hear what you're saying, Roddy. I hear what you're saying.
It's Mo. It's Mo.
I'm sorry, Mo. I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
You look alike.
You don't really look that much alike. Here I'm looking at the letter, listening to voices, but it's not the first time. All right. Yeah, I mean, I see the agent for the applicant wrote that letter. You know, that's coming from the applicant. I mean, I'm of the same view of John, that when we accept the application, that's when the clock begins, not when it's submitted to Mark Washburn. That's,
I know, but you see where it says the FCC has clarified that 30-day and 60-day deadlines begin when the applicant. So
but that's the FCC, that's not us, right?
I know, but we're talking about federal government now. We're
Mhm.
local government.
That's not our problem, I don't think.
Okay.
you know, yeah, I also feel like what Rebecca said is very pertinent, that, there are mistakes in the application. I mean, I think we should do a thorough review of the application and ask for the mistakes to be corrected.
This is an example of what we've gone through before,
Right.
when we've somehow slipped into this process where public hearings are scheduled before we've actually looked at things.
So,
So
John, but that didn't happen this time. What we have here is
so then we're in the sketch plan stage, is that right?
so
Well, this particular paragraph is very unusual because it does say that if it is incomplete, it must provide written notice to the applicant within 30 days. But we didn't say it's incomplete
We're gonna say-
when Mark Washburn acknowledged the
Right.
applicant.
I'm confused about which institution you're referring to. Oh,
Well, there's two here. There's the FCC and then there is us.
Yes,
If Mark Washburn accepted the application, then the time period started at that point.
no,
No, we have to accept. it.
we're in the sketch plan stage right now because we have not considered this change before.
And,
Okay,
and we also,
I'm just saying what, I just read this paragraph and this is what I understood.
Which paragraph are you actually referring to by number?
It's on the site plan. It's notice of eligible facilities request. It is a letter that was written to John Zepko, and it's a paragraph that says section 6409.
But that's the FCC, right?
Right.
No, he's right.
State and
No.
local governments.
No, he's
So I
reading
think
it correctly. The last two sentences, he's reading that correctly.
Yeah.
But we don't know what Mark Washburn said in his email. He may have
Right.
said, yes, I got your stuff. He didn't say I
Exactly.
accept it.
I
We don't
think
know
That's
what he
right.
said.
We don't
I
know
think
what
it
he
is-
said.
I think an important thing to note here, and I think that we should just continue to follow our protocol regardless of this letter from the applicant. This is a
Okay.
letter stating the applicant's reading of the law. However, we have our own protocols and we have our own attorneys and our own folks that can read the law as well.
Well,
And-
Pete, can you just ask John about this to make sure that we are doing the right thing?
I mean, John's not here. And I
No, I
mean,
know that. I'm saying tomorrow or whatever,
yeah,
just to make
absolutely.
sure.
Yeah, and also Nathan Vanois, if you on the fly have anything that you could bring to the table here, that would be helpful. But otherwise, I think we should review the application, decide whether or not it's complete, decide whether or not we want to accept it, and just do our process as normal.
Okay, okay.
But
I just
wanna
wanted to
give you
bring
a
that up.
chance- I want to give you a
Oh,
chance to just speak up if you have something that you'd like to say.
Mo, I think that the issues that you're bringing up are very valid and relevant, right? That there needs to be perhaps some consideration of the timeline and the review by the town and the acceptance of materials and the response from your code enforcement officer to submission of an application like this to make very clear that perhaps an application is not complete until it has been reviewed by the planning board. These are all things that I think, again, are very valid and relevant and should be discussed. I think to Pete's point, there's an application tonight. The next step for your board's process is to schedule a public hearing and move forward with it. You know, the things that you're bringing up should be discussed, reviewed, and determined that we're following them correctly. Or if we need to tweak our process, then we should. But otherwise, let's move forward with the standard planning board process for this type of an application.
Yeah, but actually, if you look at our document, oh, it's kind of hard to figure out those numbers again. 219-19, I guess it's under C. If we're in the sketch plan conference now, at the conclusion of the sketch plan conference, we would, as I read it, item number 4, we will decide on several things, whether signage is to be put up, whether there's, and whether there's a public hearing. It's not an automatic that there'll be a public hearing.
So could I call on Liz and then Rebecca and then Colin? Because you've had hands up.
What's the question?
Well, Liz had her hand up, so I just want to go ahead.
And I took my hand down, so I'm
Oh.
just
So did
gonna listen
Rodney.
a little bit longer.
Rodney/Mo had his hand up.
Don't confuse me, Maria. Don't make it worse. All right, go ahead, Rodney.
Well, I mean, it seems to me one part is sort of clarifying the number 6 versus 9. Second part is the FCC, which has maybe a different purview that we don't need to address. I think Nate made the point that what we're doing is our own thing. It has nothing to do with the FCC. It is a confusing letter, but I don't think we need to give it, per Nate, credence at the moment. So
Yeah,
I think Rodney's correct.
yeah, I agree. And Colin, you had your hand up. What would you like to say?
Thank you. The federal law here does actually supersede local permitting jurisdictions, and I don't want to be like real combative, and we want to be a good partner, but the federal law does supersede local jurisdictions, and once an application is accepted, once it's handed over, and the local jurisdiction has it in their hands, it's their responsibility to review the application and say whether it's complete or not within 30 days. If it's not, if no correction letter is issued within 30 days, then you have to approve it within 60, as the letter states. So it's because like jurisdiction, you can't just take a application and then schedule a hearing, say in an extreme case, a year later. It's the process needs to start, and the federal government, is trying to
So
encourage
Colin,
the deployment of
Colin,
wireless.
not to interject or challenge you on this, but
Mhm.
the letter from, which is dated April 4th, 2022,
Mhm.
simply states that there was submitted with this letter and the letter to the town and acknowledged by Mark Washburn on March 30th via email, as well as the enclosed items, which were submitted apparently with this letter on April 4th,
Mhm.
that the 60 or the 30 and 60-day timeline started. Now, the letter is pretty conclusory. And of course, you're representing your client, stating that this is the 30 and 60-day shot clock period. I think what the town planning board is saying is that they believe the shot clock did not start until some date later than what was posited in this particular letter. And I think if you want to challenge it, then go ahead and challenge it. But what the town planning board is telling you is that they believe the application was not completely submitted and accepted until some date much later than what was actually posited in this letter.
Yeah, like
I guess for my notes then, would it be, when would if not when the materials were provided and the application submitted, like when would the time, the shot clock, when would you say that time is?
Today we have the planning board reviewing the application materials, which were apparently not completely submitted until at least the latest, or the earliest rather, April 4th. And we've heard that there is incorrect information in this application. So you are being told that this application is not correct.
Okay.
I would also just want to kind of just to let you know the process that we have, Colin, is we want to make sure that the application is complete before we say yes, we're giving like our stamp of approval as far as like accepting it goes. Because you can imagine somebody says, hey, I turned in something, but maybe they only had half the material. Granted, you had lots of material, like there's reams of material with this application, but that just, it helps it helps us and it helps applicants to avoid that kind of situation where people say, oh, I had everything in, but we found out that in fact some things were missing or some things were incorrect. So it allows us all to be on the same page.
Understood.
Yeah, and we did actually just receive a couple things that came in like yesterday, that were not submitted to John Wordis until yesterday. One of them was the attestation. So that's
I'm sorry, Peter, I even brought this up, but unfortunately I do read all the applications.
Mo, I'm glad you brought it up.
I would have anyway, so it's my responsibility to mention.
I mean, I think at this point, what we want to do is sort of give you a list of anything additional like that we would want to see, i.e. corrected number of antenna, right? And have those materials submitted to us in advance of a public hearing that we're going to schedule. And I do want to give the planning board an opportunity to just, have any further discussion right now about the application itself, the materials in the application. Is there anything additional that planning board members wanted to see, or do you have any questions about the material that's been provided?
I don't.
Rebecca, yes.
Okay. Yes, I'll be pleased to see the corrections made on the issue of the antennas. This is I don't know this answer. Normally I talk about stormwater. I do not know this at all. So you're proposing a significant increase in, the capacity of this cell tower, and you're adding structures at the bottom to support it. Is there any concern, or will our public be concerned about the amount of the electrical field or electromagnetic field around this, where, like there's now a residence right by? Should they be concerned? I don't, at some point it gets so big, I could imagine some people might be concerned about that. This is not my area of expertise. Can you talk to that issue at all, whether it's something we may have to be prepared for comments from the public about it?
If I hear correctly, Rebecca is asking whether or not we should be scheduling a public hearing. Is that correct, Rebecca?
No, I'm asking, I want to know a little more information about what the potential impacts are of this expanded facility in an area that I'm not familiar, which is some kind of electromagnetic field that, it's generated by power plants and things like that. Again, not my area, so I sound very naive, but I figure Colin can comment on it. I don't know. Again, it's not my water.
Other than aesthetics, what kind of effects would you be looking for? And who would you ask?
I will say that the attestation letter that came in says that the electricity, or the field, generated by the tower is within FCC standards. I can't speak to what those standards are, but that is attested to. I did email that out to you earlier tonight.
Right, and that's great, and thank you. That's the tower, but I'm concerned about the structures on the ground. Did that also apply to the structures on the ground?
I don't know.
Would you repeat that question, Rebecca?
So the attestation that showed up yesterday said that the electrical ramifications or generation by the tower are within FCC standards. There's a lot of new structures on the ground. That's what they're mainly concerned about. They're expanding the platform, and 2 new structures being created. There's more fencing to encompass them. And I'm asking whether there's any electromagnetic fields associated with the power system on the ground.
So is that a question directed to the gentleman who's come to talk to us tonight?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
That's a good question. It's the antennas, just the antennas that transmit and receive the signal. So there is base station equipment, but it's just, you could think of it as, it's electronic equipment. So you could think of it as similar in nature to like a server for a computer mainframe or something like that. It's just the antennas that transmit and receive. And
would you call it environmentally benign?
I would say that I have to kind of stay within my lane as a non-RF engineer and say that this is regulated by the federal government, by the FCC, and that the proposed installation complies with all federal law. But
go ahead.
Yeah.
Liz, I see your hand is raised. And by all means, just feel free to speak up.
Yeah. So when are we going to go through seeker? Because a lot of my questions are on that, but one sort of overarching question is, this is a little outside the normal projects that planning boards would look at. It's really technical as far as, there's hundreds of pages of information there. is it, would the planning board ever consider having a consulting engineer sort of review these? Because I don't know if there's still, once upon a time, there used to be an engineer sort of on contract for this kind of thing to review and say, yeah, this, it all looks like the right information. Because I think this is pretty technical for, it's
Very
outside of
technical.
what's normal for this group,
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah, agreed. That's a really interesting question. I think it's a good question to bring up with the town board.
Right, it's a question that has to go to the town board because the town board is going to be paying, or who's going to be paying this consultant? Right?
Well, Rick, can I say something about that?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think you do have a budget where you could hire for an hour an engineer, and they can look at it if you want to. I think that's in your purview.
Okay.
I mean, it used to be that we had a contract with MRB engineering, and so that we wouldn't have to like do an RFP to find the engineer. It was just the town's consulting engineer. I don't know if that's changed or not, but if it hasn't changed, then it might be a good idea to just run this past the consulting engineer, just to say, hey, we've got this
Yeah.
over and above our normal, whatever we do.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I will reach out to Caitlin about that.
This is pretty specialized stuff, but an engineer is not an engineer is not an engineer. So presumably other planning boards have had similar issues. It seems to me, rather than have us try and guess what the public might think about this thing, would be to do a little sleuthing. Maybe it falls to you about what have other planning boards dealt with when a similar improvement to the array is being made to the antennas.
Not to sound like I'm on Colin's side, but one of the things
You can be.
Yeah,
one of the things
we're
I
not
think
against Colin.
one of the things is important to remember here, right? This is an existing, I believe, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, an existing tower, which means it has gone through the process already, which are many of the concerns I think that are being raised. This is an addition to an existing tower.
Right.
And so because of the way that your local code is written, it does require a new site plan review. And it looks like there's a new 10 by 15 foot concrete pad being constructed as part of this project, which certainly something should be reviewed. But I think I also heard it's 3 more lumps on an existing tower. And I want to bring us back to what the scope of it is. We have a process and it does require us to review it. Many of these questions are very valid and relevant, especially for new towers. But I don't want the planning board to take on more purview than what it's really required under the current planning authorizations.
Right.
The real question is what's going to go on that pad. It's not a question of the pad itself, but there will be some additional devices of some sort. I'm perfectly happy to accept the fact that it's regulated by the federal government, and the government loves us and would not let anything happen. So that's where I sit.
Yeah.
John, you never worked for the federal government.
Thank you for that. So I think this is a good segue to turn our attention to the seeker. The seeker has been completed. I would like folks to just take a look at it and see if you have any questions about any of the answers that any of the boxes that have been checked on the seeker.
It's not the seeker really that is being questioned here, I don't think.
No, I understand that. I would like to, I think one thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the town forward what our options are for a consulting engineer to look at it. I think we need to decide, you know, whether or not to have a public hearing, and then we need to say, is there anything else that we want in this application? And I think, you know, let's take a look at the seeker, because that might lead us towards some of those, lead us towards answering if there's anything else we want.
Go ahead, let's run through the seeker.
Can I just ask one question that was brought up when Nathan said, let me bring us back. So
Yeah.
is this, is what's being, is it the existing tower? There's not any new tower being built. It's just the existing tower with something new on it. Is that right?
And-
So
and
like
then
all of
expanding
the
the footprint.
all of the calculations of wind and tension and all that other stuff, that it really doesn't play into it so much, because it's not like you're building a new
Well,
tower.
Liz,
Am I
I think it does change all that, because there's going to be more weight on the tower now. However, that they did submit, you know, the plans with all the reams of numbers of saying, you know, yes, this tower will support the weight that we're adding in such and such wind velocity. You know, it can handle however many miles per hour wind gust. So I think they had to redo those calculations when they decided to make the tower heavier and more, and it had more wind resistance.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
I'm in the box and I don't have the seeker. I have Count Castle site plans, owners continued, site plan application, structural analysis, and Trumansburg photo sim.
So
Do I find the seeker?
site plan application,
Oh, okay. I
go
got it.
there, and then you go down
At
to
the bottom.
page, yeah, it is page 5 of the site plan application.
No, that's not right.
Yes, and here it says T-Mobile proposes adding 6 antennas with ancillary, so that needs to be changed to 9.
Nope.
And do you see it, Rebecca?
Well, I clicked on that and what I have is the T-Mobile, all the drawings and schematics, which is about 10 pages, including the array and electronics. I don't have that one that says Crown Castle Site Plans PDF. It does not have seeker on it, so I must be looking at the wrong thing, but that's what
Mine
I've
just
got.
says site plan application PDF. It's about the 4th line down in that Dropbox segment.
Site plan application PDF. Ah, yes, thank you so much. I got it.
Yep. And if you go to page 4, or no, page 5, that's the top of it.
Okay. Got it. Thank you. I appreciate your patience.
Pete,
Yeah.
on that site plan review tab that I was discussing, if you scroll down about 100 pages, at the bottom is the letter that John sent to them with all the requirements. And it does state that Mike Washburn did not have the power to accept the application. Only the planning board can accept the application. So John did say it, but unfortunately, this email is 100 pages down. It's the last page. Why it wasn't up on top?
Yeah.
I'm wondering why it wasn't up on top so we could see it. But on there, John also asked the applicant for every item. And if everybody turns to it, they can see if everything has been submitted. All the items. It's all the way on the bottom of that.
All right. Mo, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Pete,
John.
it seems like something continues to be missing from me. And when I look at the agenda for this particular item, it should say at the beginning of the information about the agenda that what's happening is a completed application is being presented to the planning board for sketch plan review. Unless I'm wrong about the whole process, that seems to me where we are. And this is our opportunity to ask for additional information, blah, 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 that we may think should be added or to move ahead.
So this is our opportunity to ask for additional information or corrected information that we think should be added. to review it and to ask for anything extra.
And
That's
then at some point
my
down the
understanding.
road, we close the sketch plan review, and that's when time starts.
so I'm not quite ready to close it yet. But that, John, we're on the same page.
Okay,
Yeah. I did just want to go through the seeker because there may be things that people want the applicant to provide, and the seeker could sort of direct our thoughts, towards
let's do it.
that.
I'll start with the brief description. It says 6 antennae, and I wanted to change to say 9.
Yep. Also, cabinets on a 10 foot by 15 foot concrete pad. So those are the dimensions of the pad. It's just sort of a bump out on the side. There's going to be a generator and the extending chain link fence, 12 feet by 20 feet within Crown property. So, more on the tower and a slightly larger footprint. Question about the generator. Colin, maybe you could answer this. When does the generator operate?
So the generator's there for power outages.
Okay.
So that if there's a power outage, the site remains online, and then people can continue to use their cell phone, especially for emergencies.
Okay.
And that's another federal requirement that they put on the carriers, is to have some resilience in their system.
Okay.
And then, so that's the purpose of the generators, to provide emergency power in case of a power outage. They do just like any generator or any engine, it needs to run occasionally to lubricate and maintain.
Right. Okay.
Generator. So it will occasionally run just as a maintenance, but it would be on continuously for a power outage.
Okay, thank you.
About that, will the noise exceed the 90 decibel limit beyond the property boundaries?
I mean, I don't have a noise study, but these generators are not noisy, and the property is huge.
Is there currently a generator on site? Just curious.
Just looking at the plans. Yeah, there's an existing generator to the south of the shelter. So I would.
Isn't it close to the boundary with the house right, like 150 feet away? The neighboring house, am I misremembering this? Let me get the map out.
Yeah, I see the property line there. Let's see. I'd have to measure it. I don't know the exact distance. It's further than the existing generator. I could just eyeballing the CDs.
I'm not going to go through every question on the seeker, but I just wanted to bring the board's attention to it, and now would be the time to ask any questions related to that, request any material related to it.
Uh,
Wondering, number 5, it says that check all the land uses that occur, and just agriculture and other is specified, but this is check all the land uses that occur on and are adjoining or near the proposed action. And I would think that rural non-agriculture would be checked as well. I'm not sure how important this is, but would anybody agree with that?
I suppose I would agree with it. Although I don't think it's
Doesn't make
it's
much
primarily
difference.
agricultural. I mean, across the street, it borders almost 3 sides of it border farm field.
There's a little house right next to it, but what difference does it make actually in the long run?
I mean, I agree with you. I'm not entirely sure how much difference this makes, but it does seem like if it's here, it should be accurate. So I would suggest that it's saying rural non-agriculture should be checked on that. Yeah.
So put a check mark.
Okay.
I have 4 things on here. Can I just go
Sure,
through
please,
them? Number 5, it says, wait, is it 5? Oh, sorry, 6. Is the proposed action consistent with the predominant character of the existing built or natural landscape? And it says yes, but I mean, it's kind of not. It's the only thing that's like that. So I guess I would say no on that one.
I don't think that's true because it's the existing tower.
It's
And
already
it's
there.
not changing its silhouette. You know, it's been there for a long time and they're not increasing the height or the width by any amount. So it's not changing the character. I mean, we're concerned about the height and the silhouette of it, and they're not changing that.
Just
Okay.
getting lumpier.
Yeah. What are your others?
Excuse me, Pete.
Yeah.
I think the letter that John sent, he has a list of items to be answered. I know that they sent us a whole bunch of reports and they're very good reports, but unfortunately for us to go through it and find every little item, because he has number 1 through 6, and then he has A, B, and C, all these items. It would be nice if on the report, we can have the number or the item that was discussed by John, so we can actually see it. We just have a report of an engineer report, but it's hundreds of pages to go through, and half of it we don't understand. But he
Right.
does have some items here that we should really have answered, and it should be answered. So like the question here, it says, demonstrate that the tower is structurally sound. I saw the report. It says it's structurally sound, but to find it, you have to go through all those sheets. Why can't we have it listed in the order that John has it? So that we can actually see it all.
And maybe because we don't have a town planner to do that.
Well, no, I'm
So-
talking about the applicant. They had this list. It's a good sized list and everything is this, is on it. And all they have to do is answer each question. That's all. So we can see it or reference which page it's on. So we can look at that line and then reference the page that it's on. Right now, we just go through a lot of pages and hopefully we figure out what it is.
You said
But there is some interesting items on it.
You said that was page 100.
It's all the way at the bottom where it says site plan, the item site plan
Okay.
that I was, that the letter I was reading.
Okay.
Go all the way down and it's a long way down and you'll see the letters, the emails that John sent back and forth.
All right.
And the last page is the items that John wanted.
So I do want to, be complete at the same time. I believe that John submitted this application to us. That with the expectation, not expectation, but I believe that he submitted it to us believing it was complete, that the items that had been needed were satisfied.
Oh yeah, I know. It probably is on all the pages are
Yeah.
probably all those answers. But if I look at one, it says about icefall and debris from the tower. Is there a page that says, is there a section that tells us about icefall and debris from the tower falling? Because there's supposed to be a radius around the tower.
So there is
I can look through 100 sheets and maybe find it, but it would be
Right.
better if they can just put it on there and say, on page 5, this is the answer.
I agree. I think Mo's right about this. I mean, I agree with Mo. It should not be
It's
our job.
an
to look
easy
through it.
fix. I mean, it's not
Okay.
something that they have to rewrite anything. Just look at the question. They know where it is, put it down.
So Colin, would you annotate the letter with, that letter that John sent? Would you annotate it or have your engineer annotate it with where those things can be found in the material? Is that something that Crown Castle can do?
You just want a narrative for
More like a
the
reference point.
zoning code saying like on page 50,
Yes.
for instance, the ice question,
Mhm,
the 7th page of the CD is C-1.5.
mhm.
It does show that there's a proposed 6x10 ice canopy. But yeah, I understand the question is like you want a
That's- I
narrative
mean-
saying like on this page of the submitted materials, you'll find.
Because we have
Yes.
about 200 pages of material here, and a lot of it is, engineering specific. And so that would be helpful.
Yeah, project narrative.
Yeah, with annotations of where in the project.
Tied to John's question, John Zepko's questions.
Right, yeah. Yeah, for just to show compliance with the zoning code.
And then I know that Liz, you had mentioned you had 4 points in the seeker, and I think you spoke of 2. Do you want to before
Yeah,
Mo
there
got
was,
involved? Did you want to speak to the other 2?
yes. This is more of a comment than a problem with the seeker at all. It says, and I should probably take this afterwards. It is number 13. Do any of the portions of the site or the proposed action or lands adjoin the proposed contain wetlands or other water bodies? And it says yes, but it would be nice if the application had in there like where the water body was. I couldn't find that, but maybe it's in there somewhere, but that could be something included too. And finally, the very last thing is number 14. There's nothing checked. It says identify the typical habitat types that occur on or are likely to be found on the project site. So I think that just probably should have something on there.
Yeah, agreed.
So are we at a point where one could say that we want to make a motion to have the various questions answered? We're keeping the sketch plat open until the next meeting and go from there?
Do you need a
Not
motion?
quite-
You don't
wait a
need a
minute, Not
motion.
quite yet. We don't have the
Yes.
full list. I still have things I want included, so.
Okay.
Until you get the entire list, and it probably needs to be written down. No, we're not quite ready for that, John.
So I think what John's saying is that, or I guess what Rebecca, you have things that you would like to add right now to the list of
The
things.
two issues that I brought up, which are, I mean, look, I deal with all your water issues, right? The wetlands, everything. That's my purview, stormwater runoff. It's not sound generation or electrical magnetic field, but those are potential environmental impacts from this site that can't answer them. And so I would like to have information so that neighbor that's sitting only a couple 100 feet away doesn't come and say, you guys didn't look into this? They put in this giant generator and I have to listen to it every night or every other night or whatever. So I would like to have information about the sound potential sound issue and the potential electromagnetic field issue associated with the generators and the things on the ground. Yes,
Okay,
I would like an
okay.
engineer. Look at that, just so we do our due diligence. I don't think they're problems, but it's not my area of expertise, so I can't address it. I can usually deal
Okay.
with the other ones and give you expert advice on it, but not this one. So I would like someone to provide us with that advice.
I think that's great. Something I would like to know too is, you mentioned the generator will run occasionally to keep itself maintained, and I would like to know how often it runs. Is it
Just to
once
be
a
clear,
month?
it's a standby generator, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it's
Runs when the
gonna
power
run only
goes
when the
out.
electricity
No.
goes
It
out.
runs more often than when the power goes out. It has to run occasionally just to keep
Right.
itself, lubricated. So what is that? Is it daily? Is it monthly? Is it every 6 months? Like, that'd be nice to know.
I've worked on generators before, big ones, and there's usually maintenance once a month. It might run, it depending on the schedule. They can do it once a week, every 2 weeks, or once a month.
Okay.
So you would have to have that indicated in the site plan.
Okay. So was there anything else that anybody else wanted to see? Because I would like to close this section. We do have another application before us. We're asking for some additional information. We're asking for some of the information that's been provided to be annotated. And I think these are all good asks. Okay, so I don't know if we need to move to close this section. I would like to schedule a public hearing, given
Um,
No,
I'm
do
just
you-
raising the question as to in our document, item 4, under 21219 C 4,
Mhm.
there's, I'll read it. At the completion of the sketch plan conference, which we haven't completed, I don't believe, the planning board will determine which of the following public notices will be required. And the question is whether it's just signage, whether there is notification, or whether there's notice of a public hearing.
So
I-
John Zepko had told me that a public hearing for this particular type of project is required.
Well, I don't
And-
know where you get that from, but I guess we can schedule a public hearing whenever we want to. As a matter of fact,
I mean, it might be required, but I don't know that, I'm not sure, maybe we can get some guidance on this. It seems like we're saying that the application is not complete, and so it would be logical that that public hearing wouldn't be set until after the application is complete. But Nathan, I don't know, do you have?
I think we're looking to meet again, in a month. And so ideally, we'd be able to get all that material before then and be able to have the public hearing, a month from now. That
What-
would give us time to review the review the additional material, if it was ready by then.
But I guess that's kind of legally blocking the planning board into a corner, isn't it? But because you don't know that you have the final, like all of the information that you want yet. It would seem like you would get all the information that you want first before you set that public hearing. But I don't know. I mean,
I agree with Liz.
Yeah. And so would we keep this open then? Basically adjourn this?
yeah,
Keeping us with the sketch plan open, looking for this information. There's actually, Pete, something you should look up in our zoning. You're required to make a list of the material that we want and to give that to the applicant.
Right.
You better check that out.
Well, so we are doing that currently, John.
Yep.
I mean, that's sort of the result. That's the end result of this meeting.
Well,
Yeah.
Pete, just,
Nathan, do you have a legal eye on this? I mean, what would you say?
The big issue is that the federal government does set a 30 and 60-day shot clock for town action. And so, as Colin mentioned, and as is they try to describe in their letter, they try to set dates for those things. Your town code specifically addresses communication transmission towers and telecommunication facilities under Article 22 of your zoning code. And so the section that I'm specifically looking at is 212-148, the procedures. After the applicant has filed all documents and supplied all information required by the building inspector, but not later than 30 days from the date a completed application is filed, the building inspector files that application and all other documents with the chair of the planning board, who places the application on the agenda of the next meeting of the planning board. The application is reviewed at that meeting, and the chair shall set a date for a public hearing, notice of which shall be posted, and then it keeps going on. I think what has been identified tonight is that the information supplied is inadequate. There are errors in the documentation that's been submitted. So it's not a complete application. At least that's my interpretation of what the board has identified.
Oh, I agree with you, Nathan.
And so, as next steps are being discussed, I think, Colin, there's errors in the documentation that's been submitted. It sounds like the board is asking that it be resubmitted. If that is resubmitted, then the board would be willing to move forward with its process. But again, I don't want to speak out of turn here. If the board feels that there is sufficient information presented to allow it to move forward with the process, that's up to the board to decide.
Nathan, I'm on the same page with you. And I think the rest of the board is as well.
What page is that?
It's a page that we need more information and so, all right. we
Okay.
won't schedule a
Would you like
public one.
Should that be made as a motion that the planning board would try to do that? Keep the sketch plat open while we collect the additional information that we've identified. And then we will review that, schedule public hearings as necessary or whatever and move ahead.
I
John?
would,
Go ahead, Nathan. I'm sorry.
oh, sorry. I was going to say, I would suggest, because of the issues that the board has identified,
Mhm.
rejecting the application
Exactly.
because it is incomplete
Right.
for all the reasons that the board has discussed tonight.
Okay.
And so, because the way that your town code sets forth the process, right? An application is submitted to the building inspector, who then forwards it to the planning board, and then they take action upon it. You have identified that there are many deficiencies with this application tonight.
So,
I don't have any reason to believe that they won't be fixed. If you reject them tonight, then I imagine there will be an additional submission with clarifying information pretty quickly.
so I'd accept a motion to reject the application as it stands.
I'll make a motion to reject the application until we get more information that's
Second.
required.
Second. All right, all in favor?
I
Aye. Okay.
Except I don't think we needed to do that really, in the sense if we understand our process and what the sketch plan is really all about. And we really have a confusion here because there is the special case of tower evaluations versus a regular site plan review. And that's a little dicey.
Mhm.
Just
But
Just
we
for
can
my
try that.
sanity here, can I review the bidding? I mean, part one of the inconsistencies getting fixed, 6 versus 9. Part two is the annotation version of where in the various documents submitted are there answers to John's questions. Part three is what I'll call the unknown unknowns. And I'm hoping Colin can address some of those in the next version. It sounds like we should have a public hearing and schedule it just because there are going to be questions.
Let's not do that at this point. I think once we have the info like we just discussed, let's wait on that, and then we can decide, we can take that.
So we're going to delay this project for a month in order to get the information that we hope could be given to us relatively quickly.
Unless we meet on it 2 weeks.
Nope, sorry, we're not meeting in 2 weeks. That was my initial plan, right? To schedule a public hearing, and after hearing from Nate and Liz and other board members who cautioned, hey, we don't have all the information, let's not schedule a public hearing.
Well, I guess my problem is the 6 versus 9, easily fixed, hope they'll do it. Where are the answers to the questions? Hopefully that's easily fixed. Let's just do it. The unknown unknowns, meaning noise, electrical hums. I'm not sure how we get answers to
What
that.
I understood from Nate was that once we schedule a public hearing, we've started the shot clock, and that's really the clincher. Like once we say, hey, we're scheduling this, it's go time as far as the clock. So that's part of my understanding of why.
Yeah, no, and
we should
I
hold
accept
on.
that. I'm sort of saying, why are we delaying this for a month?
I think it's important to make sure you have a complete application and all the questions answered before you set a public hearing. Otherwise, I mean, it's just, I think it's sort of dangerous to do that in a way. You want to make sure to have everything correct and I don't know.
And I'm okay with that, except that we've got unknown unknowns. I don't know about the noise. I don't know about the generation, and I don't know how we get answers to that.
Well, there's answers out there for those things, and that's part of what we've asked for. and how long it takes to get them, maybe it's quick, maybe it's not, right? I'm not sure.
I
Well,
thought
and-
we were, wait, I thought we were gonna, actually, as Rich Goldman said, let's just get an engineer with the right training, the appropriate one. So both of those questions kind of fall under the purview of like electrical, mechanical, electrical engineering. I don't think it'll be that hard to have it reviewed. I mean, and we have some money in the budget according to Liz and Rich. So that was my understanding of the answer to the unknown unknowns.
Yeah, okay.
So one of the things I think it's important to just remind the board is that under the specifically the telecommunications section of your local law, if the planning board requires the assistance of a consultant to evaluate the application, the reasonable fees for consultation required by the planning board to evaluate the application shall be borne by the applicant. So it's perfectly reasonable for you folks to ask for a consultant to assist you and to say to, in this case, the applicant, I was going to say Colin, but Crown or whoever it is, to basically bear that cost, because you folks, as you have identified, need assistance in evaluating this.
Right. Yeah, and I think that we don't know how long, we can't say, oh, that will definitely be ready and sent to us in adequate time for us to review it within 30 days. Like, I don't know that. It may be 6 weeks. I have no idea. So I do think it is a good idea to not schedule a public hearing when we have this much outstanding information. It's not just like, hey, where's that property line, or where's that, is there a wetland on there?
And so we're leaving it open at the sketch plan stage, and we will deal with it at not in 2 weeks, but in 4 weeks. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay.
Colin has his hand up. Is that?
Colin, go ahead.
I personally have a lot of trouble imagining, as from what I've learned tonight, that anything that is being added to this renovation of the device is going to be any more dangerous than what's there now. But I hear a lot of questions out there from you guys.
Colin, what would you like to say? And then we do need to wrap up this.
I just had a few questions. The first, for any deficiencies that the board is finding, are you going to provide a written response saying we would like to see 1, 2, 3?
Yeah.
Great. Because some of it, I wasn't sure if the board is interested in hiring a third party to review, say, the structural analysis, or whether the board is requesting, an additional study, say, for a noise study. But I would note that since a noise study isn't one of the deliverables in the code, Verizon may be, or T-Mobile may be reluctant to provide something that's outside of the scope of the code. And also, just so my report to Crown is correct, so it's the board's position that more than a month after an application was submitted, the deficiencies can be identified.
I think our document requires that our chairman provide that information to you.
More than a month after the submission?
No, it's a limited time.
So as was noted earlier by Nate, and then we really do have to move on from this one. What was noted earlier by Nate was John, and actually by Mo, was John's response saying that Mark Washburn did not have the authority to accept the application. And tonight we're seeing the application. We're saying we're also not accepting it based on these missing parts or these inaccurate parts, and that we to get those parts need to be corrected and the additional information provided.
I mean, sorry to be combative, but when a submission is made to the planner and code at ulysses.ny.us, that's not a submission because it's not looked at for more than a month. I just have to be able to answer these questions to Crown.
So Colin, I think one of the biggest things, at least to me anyway, is the simple question of, is it 6 or is it 9?
But again, more than a month later. Submitted on the
And-
1st.
And
it's the
your application is just by in its inherent nature contradictory. What are you asking for? And I think that's what the board has asked.
third. Okay.
Or is it 6 or is it 9? Is it 6 or is it 9?
Mhm.
All right, we do have to wrap up this this section. Thank you, Nathan. Thank you, Colin. Thank you, everybody, for taking a hard look at this. We have one more item on the agenda tonight, and that is site plan review for 108 Willow Creek Road. I want to give an opportunity for the applicants or the representatives to speak to this site plan review, speak to their application. Do we have Debbie and Mike here or their representative?
Yeah, I'm here, Jason Demarest. I'm the architect.
Hi,
And-
Jason, welcome.
Thank you. And Mike and Debbie are listening in.
Okay. Yeah, tell us about your project. We got the application that you submitted. Let us
Okay,
know a little bit.
I'm gonna share my screen and walk you through it.
Okay, great, thank you.
It says host has disabled screen sharing.
All right, I'm gonna allow you to screen share. Give me 1 second.
Sure.
All right, you should be good. Can you share now?
Yep, there we go. All right. Everyone can see a photo on the screen now?
Mhm.
Yep. Okay, so again, I'm representing Mike and Debbie Kmark, 108 Willow Creek Point Road. It's in the Lakeshore District. In the photo here, you see the existing house, covered boat slip, dock, storage building on the beach, and then a stair to the right there coming down to the beach. There's about a 35-foot cliff that separates the house level from the beach. Relatively flat area in the walkout basement before the cliff, and then relatively flat beach area. Let's walk through. There's the existing stair. This stair is decades old. It's seen a little bit of TLC, maybe about 10 years ago, but it's time for it to go. So part of the project is replacing this and changing the location. The project is basically a replacement of the existing boathouse or boat storage building on the beach. And this is a rowing shell that's requiring a longer boathouse. So that's part of the project there. Sorry, let me zoom out. Again, in the upper left, hopefully you can see this. That's the existing boathouse. It's an Amish shed. You can see the kayaks and various boats. These are all elements that need a home for the winter. Photos below on the left, you can see the existing wood shed butted up to the rock face of the cliff. To the right is another photo of the rocky cliff. And then the bottom shot here is the existing dock and covered boat slip. This photo here was just submitted as an example of the style of building we wanted to work with, which is very similar to the existing house. I suppose I could have put the existing house, but this was more in the form of the project. On the site plan, you may have noticed we do call out, thoughts of a future hill hiker. This is a retirement house, and it's there may come a day when this comes in handy. It's basically 3 flights of stairs to get between the house and the beach. And then we are planning to convert the roof of the existing covered boat slip to a observation deck. we received a variance. The cliff pushed the building, as was the existing building, into the front yard or the lakeside yard. And it's required to be 40 feet, but the cliff is about 30 feet from the mean high water. But that variance was granted, so we're about 20 feet now to the front of the proposed building. Part of the variance process, we talked about adding a rain garden as a separate mitigation element to really offset the additional impervious surface. The existing boathouse is approximately 200 square feet. The proposed project is 384, so it's not a big change. But this can be a nice landscape element as well. So I included some imagery for that in the application, and I'll show you now. Give me the site plans coming up here. Give it a second. Okay. Actually, I'll work backwards. So this is a blow up view. You can see this crosshatch area, the existing dock boat slip. We're going to work with DC and Army Corps to add a boat slip to the side for a fishing boat. The dashed in existing building is right here. We're realigning the proposed accessory storage building, which also has a 3-season enclosed porch above with 2 decks to the side. We've realigned it to match up with the existing house, and then we're proposing a new stair that goes straight down on the center axis of the house. Here's the house, and then it'll turn its way around. That hill hiker I talked about, but that would come back in a future application. So that's a future element. Yeah, I think that's the bulk of it. One thing I would say is, to build this project as new construction, we have to meet the flood requirements. So it is being elevated 2 feet above the flood level. So that's raising it up, and might be a little hard to see. We're gonna add some riprap on the beach. Is really a stone beach. It's a stony beach. We're gonna put some riprap border back from the high water. The mean high water is the blue, that kind of medium blue line here, just so we can raise the grade and really fill it back up with beach stones. It doesn't, maybe some grass will grow in there, but try to build that up to create access into the storage building, so we don't have stairs. And then we're going to create kind of a ramp over on the left-hand side. So that's kind of the overview of what the proposal is. But here's the overall site plan, where you can see the whole property. It's 2.1 acre or 2.09 acres, existing house. And then the rain garden, what we propose to do, since we have this impervious surface from the existing driveway, that, and it all flows towards the creek over here on the left-hand side. That's a ravine. Hard to call it a ravine, but it's a creek. So we thought to collect some additional rainwater and treat it and contain it before it enters the creek would be a nice offset. So we sized that at 400 square feet, kind of as a trade. So we thought that was a nice feature. There actually isn't any erosion occurring at the bottom of the driveway. There's drainage and such put in during the house construction, which is about 11 years ago now, I believe. So it functions well, but it could be a nice amenity for the project. So that's the overview. Again, so the proposal, just to be clear, is over here on the left, we're removing this stair. There's an existing landing at the top that we're proposing to keep as a sunset view deck. This site is very interesting, even though it's Cayuga Lake. North is up here, so the shoreline is practically facing north. Again, we're going to build a new stair, and what we're trying to do is consolidate the house, the stair, the dock, everything kind of in one slip. So it doesn't spread across the beach and the view shed from the lake. So we're building this stair around the accessory building there. And then got one more drawing here, technical drawing, I'll call it. I provided a context map with some environmental information on it. The orange here is the flood zone, but we all know the lake is a flood zone. The parcel is here. The green is not on the project site, except some of that creek edge is unique natural area, but the beach area is not. So I just thought I'd point that out. And then you can see here the stair coming down. We've got the screen porch or 3-season porch, call it, above. And the whole reason for that was, there's a flight down to a landing, a second flight. There's a lot of movement, a lot of effort to move up and down from the beach to the house level, and that's the basement level of the house. So it's a nice place of respite. It's also the intention of this 3-season porch above the storage building is just a place to escape inclement weather, extend the shoulder seasons on the lake a little bit further, set up, some food if they're having a family gathering, and keep it out of the weather. Thunderstorms can come up in a hurry. And then you can see here, we're just adding kind of a natural elevation to the shore, building up the foundation to get above the flood elevation. And then the base level, and I'll show you in a second here what this looks like. The base level of the storage building is the storage component. That's all concrete and masonry and stone construction. So let me just show you what the proposal is. So existing house up on the cliff, stone structure. We've got some lights in there, windows to let light into the storage. There'll be a bench in there to restring a fishing pole, things like that. And then trying to, working with the materials and elements of the existing architecture and making it look a lot nicer than a Amish shed, although Amish sheds are nice, but making it match. Yeah, so that's I'd say that's it. That's the project. I'll give you the site plan here is just kind of a overview. If you have any questions.
Could you stop screen share, please, so we can see each other? I would appreciate being able
Sure.
to see everybody. Thanks.
Yep.
Is there going to be any running water, no bathroom facility, no water facility, right?
Yeah, no water. There is a beach well that sends water to the house, but we're not putting plumbing in the structure. No.
I have comments. Pete, are you vocal here?
I'm muted. Go ahead, Rebecca.
All right. Let me think. Jason, it's nice to see you again, and you always design very attractive and professional quality work. And I appreciate all the materials you have carefully put together. It's not quite clear to me how much input where you could actually give to you what you propose in terms of the design. My general take on this is I am very surprised that it made it through the Zoning Board of Appeals because it is huge. You are proposing doubling the size of the building, increasing it by more than 2 stories almost, with extensions on all sides. You also are expanding the size of the boat slips by a whole nother slip and taking up a very large visual part of the shoreline along the lake, not in keeping with what's along the rest of the shoreline. I went on Google Earth to see what other things were comparable in size, and for quite a distance, there are almost none. And so this is not in keeping with the neighborhood, which is one of the criteria by which normally the Zoning Board of Appeals evaluates a project. I find it excessive and inappropriately large, and I'm disturbed. In terms of environmental impacts, you are proposing to put basically a bulkhead in and raise the substrate on the edge of a wetland, i.e. the lake. That is not acceptable. I mean, you are going to change the hydrologic dynamics. You're saying yourself, oh, we want to get it out of the flood zone. So you're going to put a bulkhead in? I mean, you can't do that without all kinds of permits. I don't approve. And you're saying maybe some things will grow. Well, that shoreline should be supporting wetland plants and helping to do filtering of water quality and provide habitat for invertebrates and other organisms. So you totally are artificially changing the shoreline properties. And then when I looked at your photos, you have a lot of boardwalk covering the shoreline. This is not in keeping with what our goals are for the town of Ulysses shoreline appearance. So I don't know what rights we have to put restrictions or limits on what you've done. And that may be only my personal opinion about the appearance being inappropriately excessive. So I'm presenting my opinions. The rest of the board will have theirs. Again, you do really good work and you're obviously meeting the needs of your client, but it's not appropriate. That's my opinion.
Question.
Yeah, by all means, chime in. Go ahead.
Well, actually, I'm not quite clear what Rebecca is referring to as what our expectations are for the shoreline. It seems to me that if you're out on the lake, what you see are smaller, larger domiciles with material developed so that there's boat access. And then there's interspersed with some shorelines that are tree covered. This existing shoreline right now essentially is a bare cliff. There are no trees or anything down on the lake level, as was described. It's a rocky beach, a narrow rocky beach. So, Rebecca, it seems like you're wanting to legislate the kind of architecture that one would put along the lake shore. I'm not sure that that's our responsibility.
How about other board members? I saw you, Liz.
Yeah, I'm just, there was back in 2009 and 2010, we were, we went round and round about putting more regulations along the shoreline for boathouses and things like this, but they did not. Some of the suggestions passed and some of them didn't. So I didn't read super duper closely, but I think all of this, is allowed in our zoning. So,
Bulkheading, what he's proposing very quietly stated is some form of a bulkhead or reinforcement so he can change the grading on the beach. In a wetland, which is legally within 100 feet of the wetland water edge, but actually further back, that is not allowed.
I think he's just changing the grading in the front of the proposed boathouse.
You can't do that, John, in a wetland. You can't dredge and move material around without a lot of permits from Army Corps and the DEC. He is literally within less than 20 feet of a water's edge.
Let's clarify that because I'm not clear. My understanding is that the existing boathouse would be raised a foot or so, and there would be some not riprap, but solid stone blocks in front of it. It's not really changing the beach at all, other than it's back further in the beach. And it's just going to be rock in front of a new building.
Oh my God, you guys, you don't get wetlands at all. I mean, maybe I misunderstood Jason.
Well, let
Jason,
me-
I couldn't speak.
Yeah,
Sure.
let me ask this, Jason. It appears that the building is being raised by putting it on a concrete foundation. That
Right.
was my take on the building. And then the area in front of it, if I'm understanding right, you were planning to fill that with what? And if so, with what?
Stone, the same material that's there. Let me, if I may, can I share the screen again? I think it might help.
Yeah. please. Can you share it?
Yep.
Okay.
And I think the rendering might be helpful. and some of this that you see here might not be perfectly modeled.
It looks
but
like a wall. Is that a wall?
it's a series of steps, and we can pull that back, but it's all outside of the high water line. So if I go back to the close-up site plan, which you have, again, the blue line, the water never goes above that, you know, maybe in an extreme flood area, but over here, see the riprap into the lake. And that's because at the time when that was built, and it was actually, this wall was moved after the DEC came in and said it was built a little too close, so it was corrected. But that sometimes that's just a little discrepancy in the mapping. So we're not necessarily looking to push way out onto the beach. We're just trying to build from the end of the dock here, just an edge, so that when you land, you can walk in the door. That has to be, because of flood regulations, it has to be elevated up to this level. So there's the door right there. So we're happy to soften this a little bit, but let me go back for a second here.
Jason, we need to
existing
get,
photo.
it's not, you cannot put a bulkhead, which is what that is effectively, within 100 feet of the edge of a waterway or wetland. I mean, it's not legal in New York State, so you are incorrect. And Nathan, I hope you will speak up here about the wetland laws for New York State. You can't just put a bulkhead in and fill up behind it. That's the point. You're in the wetland, the legal wetland.
So here's
we're above the mean high water.
That's not the point.
And this is the area we're talking about. We're talking about putting a wall right here above the high water. The beach is down here. This is low, but the water is usually right in here. And you can see some grass growing. There isn't wetland here. There's no habitat there. It's just a rocky beach. And that's what exists.
You don't understand what the definition of a wetland is. It doesn't just have to be flooded. I mean, this one actually does get flooded. The substrate is periodically inundated. There aren't many plants growing there because of the way people treat the system, but there would be otherwise. You are well within the wetland buffer area, which is when the required rule is 100 foot from the high water line. You are, I mean, actually the legal wetland will even be further back. You are definitely, I mean, is Nathan still with us as our lawyer?
Rebecca, I think the point you're raising, right, is about the legal definition of what the high water mark line is, what the wetland definition is, and that's very valid. I do not know the answer to your question specifically. That is something that I have not been asked before, and I would need to look it up.
So I do have go ahead, Nathan.
I do know.
I just have a point that, you know, as the planning board, the application before us includes schematics of this greater drawing. However, you know, our mandate is to regulate the accessory buildings that are being proposed to be built on this property, and not the waterfront, because I believe that's the purview of the DEC and the Army Corps, and that the dock and the bulkhead, as far as what extends out, you know, that is not part of the building, is not part of the mandate in front of us. I believe that, you know, what
we can't approve something illegal.
I'm not saying to approve that. I'm saying I don't think we're being asked to look at that. I think that the application before us is really for the building. You know, the dock is not ours. I don't think that the water line is ours. I believe that's the Army Corps. Yeah, please. I welcome clarification. I welcome other people's input here. Go ahead.
Clarification as to whether Cayuga Lake is by definition a wetland as compared to a water body.
We did in the most recent zoning change, there were some good setbacks from waterways and wetlands. And so that, I can't remember which section that is.
The BZA, yeah.
Certainly have setbacks from wetlands, but I'm really trying to get an answer. Is Cayuga Lake a wetland or is it a water body?
No, but there's setbacks to all the different water bodies in the zoning, and if I can find them.
I mean, there's a 40-foot setback for this one, and the BZA approved a 20-foot setback
Um,
because there's an
Can
existing.
we Zoom, have our discussion
Yeah,
without the
we can,
graphics in
stop
front of us?
sharing. Here, I'll stop.
There,
Yeah.
I can see people.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, with this, there was the existing building and the BZA approved the 20-foot setback as opposed to the 40.
But
So-
that's language that relates to construction along the lake. That's lake material. That's not wetland setbacks.
Pete, could you, I'm a little confused what we're being asked. The Board of Zoning Appeals has already okayed this, so we're just
know,
looking
no.
at the structure.
Well, that's what I'm bringing up to the board is, you know, when this plan has come before us, I mean, I believe that, you know, the accessory buildings are regulated in our zoning, and obviously setbacks from the water is regulated in our zoning. As far as like, you know, building a bulkhead, like, or any of the modifications that they're proposing to the waterfront, is that something that's regulated in our zoning other than setbacks? That's what I'm asking. And Rebecca, if you tell
You
me.
cannot build a structure that's dependent on a bulkhead and filling behind the bulkhead. And that accessory building is what we're sitting here deciding about, but it's totally dependent on a bulkhead and filling and changing the grade in a I mean, you're literally right by the water's edge, and he's barely back from there are wetlands almost adjacent to every water body there is. There's always some kind of wetland. I can discuss all the hundreds of different types and the fact that they can be very impacted, like our lake sure is. But you have an area that gets flooded, and even all of it gets flooded periodically. So, and that's one of the parts of the definition of wetland. I am happy to work with Nathan to find the appropriate regulations over the next 2 weeks that control this kind of proposed construction. I mean, you
So-
might get away with elevated building up on like pillars or columns, but and that would take some permit regulations, input from U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
Right.
I
So
am-
here's a question about the design is the backfilling, is the building dependent on that backfilling, or is the backfilling more to raise the yard to create an area for people to walk around it? Like, does the building, which from what I could see from the drawing, the building was built on or is proposed to be built on a cement foundation, and that filling between the building and the lake is to elevate it to be, you know, an area that they can walk in, but isn't necessarily a support for the building. Like, I guess I'm asking Jason this, does that backfill support the building? Is it
No,
required
it's
for the building
just to create ease of access. You know, the flood zone construction requirements dictate the height, and it's not just flood level, it's 2 feet above flood level. So, you know, we're going to build a shed and then you have to walk up a ramp or stairs to get in. And again, the beach is rock. So anytime it floods, the rock, the water just filters through that rock. All we're proposing is to put a rocky shore with a retainage achieved by some riprap. Again, outside of the high water line, there's no habitat there. You know, so wetlands have different functions, and I'll defer to Rebecca on, you know, technical aspects. But if you walk the site, you know, there isn't any habitat there. What is there is a rocky shore with lawn in some parts and a
won't be.
pre-developed site, you know.
All right, I'm pretty strongly feeling about this. I will work with Nathan to get you all the details, because I mean, will be setting a precedent that sure, build right on the shoreline. We're out, who cares if birds would normally stop there for 3 weeks a year during migration and pick the invertebrates among the rocks. That's part of what that habitat does. Okay, that's why we see the snow geese. Here's a great example. Snow geese. All right, right. Snow geese use the tundra to nest. All right, they have to sit on the nest for 6 straight weeks without eating. The only way they can do that is they stop at Cayuga Lake. Millions sometimes. We'll have literally 1 million snow geese for 2 weeks every spring eating the scirpus, the little grasses that grow in those rocks you're talking about. So they have enough weight to get up to the Arctic and surviving on the nest without leaving it so they can keep their young alive. That's what Cayuga Lake does for migrating birds. We only see them for 2 weeks. Who cares if we destroy it? They don't depend on it. Yeah, they actually totally depend on it. And what you're describing is, oh, let's just cover up all that gravel where those little plants kind of grow and the invertebrates that these migrating birds depend on. That's what one of the ecosystem benefits of wetlands are. They may seem inconsequential to you, but they're not. So yeah,
No,
I
no,
find this really just.
You're not listening to what we're saying. We're putting rocks back, we'll put beach stone back there, and all those grasses, all that habitat will come back just like it did after it's been developed.
No, you're going to change
It
the
will
grade.
come back.
You're changing the grade by putting in the bulkhead so that the actual inundation is different for those rocks. That means the plants won't do as well. You're not, that's why you're not allowed to dredge and fill wetlands. That is like number one, not allowed.
Pete, can
Yeah,
I
Rodney.
suggest,
Yeah.
we've got questions of fact. And I'm willing to defer to Rebecca and Jason and Nate to work out what the wetland requirements are. But what's the specific question that we need to deal with tonight?
I think that, I think Rebecca, you're raising a question that can't be ignored. I think, I would like to know more about a couple different things. Who has jurisdiction over that interface between the water and the land? Is that something, that, and if it's for access to the building, then sure, that's part of the building project. And it seems like the planning board, would have a say in that. But I also wonder too, are there other ways that the building could be accessed that wouldn't create such a disturbance to that piece of shoreline as well? Like those are things that are top of my mind.
Why do I feel that I have not gotten an answer to my question? I still don't understand how we're considering Cayuga Lake as a wetland.
We're not. And then there's on page 164 of the zoning, it talks about permanent waterways, impermanent waterways, and wetlands, and what the setbacks are. And in the lakeshore zone, it's 50 feet from any stream or the lake.
But
So-
this has been dealt with already by the BZA.
Right.
No, but
Looked at that.
they were letting the building be closer than the setback, but I think that what we're talking about is this wall that and I don't know that was given a. I don't know if the BZA saw that. I don't know if that was it would be interesting to look at the BZA ruling to see if that structure that's holding back the soil was part of the variance or not.
Grading and that wall are in particularly one of the major pieces in here. All
Right.
they got permission was to move its location. That's what the variance was for, that it be allowed within the setback. It did not discuss, that's our purview to discuss the design and if the design is legal and acceptable. And I'm arguing it's not.
What is the effect, Rebecca, of the wall as you've heard it described? What is its effect on the wetland, or I guess, or no, not the wetland, the lake body as described on page 164 or whatever it is? What's actually going to be bad?
Okay.
It doesn't really matter because it's what's in the law. It's not us that's deciding what's right or wrong. We have to follow what's in the law. And right now,
of our zoning, is that what you're saying, Liz?
yeah, it's part 212-124, the standards for buffers.
Would
And
you
it's
go slowly over that and so we can actually hear what you're talking about?
Would I-
212, what?
212-124. It's
120.
section B, stream and wetland protection setback. And that gives a lot of what you're asking about, what the benefits are. And then there's a chart that says all the different setbacks in the different areas. So I guess that you know, the building itself has already been given a variance, but what we're questioning, I believe what we're questioning is that wall that's going to be near the high water line. And has that been given a variance? Because that there, it does say any structure that's built, and I would guess, I don't know, Nathan, would you say a wall of this sort is a structure? There is also a lot of, there's somewhere in here, I don't know where it is, something about excavation and that you can't move more than, it's a pretty small amount of soil. I mean, I think it's just a few, like maybe 10 yards of soil. You can't excavate without sand
Correct.
or something else. So we need to look
Can't
at that.
excavate or fill. That's exactly right. So this is about the fact that he's actually, the footprint is now as currently designed, is saying it's going to move, fill, change the dimensions and topography along the shoreline, and put a bulkhead, effective bulkhead, which is armoring the shoreline. Bulkheads are not, I mean, that almost requires a permit just by itself. And those are things that are not legal. All they got permission so far was to be within the setback. I would argue the doubling of the size of it makes it a much more impactful structure. I mean, if he made it, you know, he could almost take up the entire shoreline, which means destroy all the wetland or effective shoreline by the size of the structure alone. I find that egregious as well. But which piece of this we're going to tackle? You know,
Well,
the bulkhead and the dredging is definitely not legal.
Well, it seems like they have a, you know, they have a variance for the building, and that's clear in, you know, in the material that was provided, but I agree, I don't see a variance for this wall. You know, and the wall is obviously not within 50 feet of the water. I mean, it's obviously within 50 feet, it's closer than 50 feet to the water. I was looking at page 164 as well in our zoning. It seems like we have two different areas here. I mean, we have the building, which, you know, call it what you want, seems more self-explanatory and more clear. You know, that setback was approved, but we don't have any kind of variance given for building this wall on the water.
Can I add something to that? The chart talks about buildings or structures.
Mhm.
Fences and walls for zoning less than 6 feet in height do not count.
Okay, you can't put a bulkhead. You're using it as a bulkhead to support substrate to reduce the flooding. Nathan, you and I will find out that this is like 101, wetland protection 101. You can't put a bulkhead right next to the lake, guys. I mean, I'll have the Army Corps of Engineers come and sue us. I'm telling you, you should know the rules about this. It's not, you can't just do that. I mean, we'll use these documents to prove you're putting a wall up and moving the fill behind it. This is like
But,
not.
Nate, I'm sorry, Pete, I have to take off.
Okay.
It seems to me sort of, this is one of those almost ideological questions about what we're doing. I'm still, you know, the Board of Zoning Appeals has already done this. I guess it makes sense to go back and look at, you know, what they checked. I had always thought the DEC and the Army Corps of Engineers were entirely, completely, solely responsible for the lakefront. And so that's why I'm questioning what our role is here.
So I would like more clarity on, you know, structure versus wall. Like, I mean, when I see structure in the zoning language, I think of that could be a wall, right? It's a structure. But I can see.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm going to defer to the architect and the lawyer to define that.
And it seems like there's outstanding questions here that we're not going to answer tonight. Like we need more information about what the law is around our responsibility as a town towards this bulkhead. Not the building so much. That seems, you know, that's more straightforward.
Okay.
Peter,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I thought you were done.
No, I'm done. Go ahead.
Okay, on 212-124 prohibited activities, section E and F are the ones that are the question. And E is soil
Disturbing.
yeah, strip mining, all of that, soil, gravel, quarry, raw materials. And F is filling or dumping. So if they're putting more rock in, that's filling.
Mm,
So
mhm.
that question really does have to be answered,
Yeah,
and we're
agreed.
not the ones who know it. So we
Right.
should probably ask somebody.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I'd like an answer to that. How does our zoning relate to that wall? And the filling behind it?
Well, it's also the new building because it says any soil disturbance is prohibited. So if they're taking the shed down and redoing it, that's disturbing the soil on a wetland or a watershed area. So that's not allowed by, well, it says by Ulysses, actually. So I think we have to answer those questions.
Yeah. So I propose,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you very much. I would propose that we would adjourn this, you know, to get further clarification on those exact questions, you know, from the town, from our legal counsel, from, yeah,
I am
Well,
happy to
whoever
work with
whoever can
Nathan.
answer those questions.
yeah, whoever
I'm
can.
happy to work with Nathan and DEC and Army Corps to get the precise rules about this for this location and these conditions. I mean, I think it affects our whole town of Ulysses Lake Shore frontage, and we need to have that really clear cut, what can be done and what can't be done. So Nathan, I am delighted to meet you and to work with you on this topic,
All right.
about which I am
All
very
right.
passionate, in case you
So-
hadn't noticed.
It seems to me that we haven't heard, or we should be hearing back from the architect or the actual owners as to whether they're feeling that there is a need to put in that rock close to the edge of the water line and fill in with earth, or whether the whole project could go ahead as designed, keeping it to the natural rocky beach.
I will make a motion to table the application until we get all our answers and Rebecca can find out what's going on, get some answers.
Well, I
Nathan,
just wanted
I'm gonna
to-
work with Nathan because he's the lawyer.
All
Okay,
right. Yeah, so I would take a second of that motion, unless the homeowners or the architect wanted to provide feedback to what John just said. John's question. And if you want to, yeah.
Yeah, I
Oh.
mean, one thing I would just say is technically the east, but the far side of the existing dock is a riprap wall above the high water line, which was constructed about 12 years ago, somehow. And so when I saw that, and because we had to raise the storage building, you know, it was a logical conclusion that we could stay out of the water and raise the shoreline, which we do not believe is identified as wetland, you know, a habitat type wetland. Now, let's say the rocky shoreline, especially right now before the lake level comes up, you know, we're out of that, right? That's usually the high water is the demarcation. So our understanding is that the DEC is involved. We're happy to shift that wall back, but we would like to have a level area outside of the storage building to gain access through the door. And we would have to ramp up on the side to move boats in and out. So that's where we stand, and I'd love to be involved in any conversations with Rebecca and Nathan to figure out what the actual regulation is if it's not really spelled out here.
I guess I would like to just say too, that I didn't notice that that part in your application, that wall was that also included in the application? Because it was a beautiful design of the boathouse that you showed us tonight. But was I missing that in the application? Because maybe we would have noticed that and given you a heads up, but
It's not in the.
We show the silt fence out near the water, and there are some tiered elevations there, but the intention is not to put hardscape in there. It's just to again, not have a stair up into a storage building.
Let me make a comment. We don't need any kind of gradation to get up to the building. We do need the building approved by this group to go ahead with it. The discussion of what we do between the building and the lake is one that we always assumed the DEC covered, and they covered it for us 12 years ago. And in any run up and down the lake, it's a rare beach that doesn't have some use of riprap on the beach above the high water mark. But that's not an issue that I'm the expert on, and experts can weigh in. What I would love to have this group do is to take the challenge of saying we want the building and we won't disturb the beach unless the DEC or whoever's in charge of it allows us to put some riprap in, which is as much ornamental as holding the beach. So if we could separate those two issues as the homeowners, if the design looks appropriate and we can accommodate whatever it is that happens between the edge of that building and the lake legally, we'd like the planning board to rule on that today so we could get started on the building planning. And if the planning is an issue, then that's a separate topic, and maybe that's an issue that you need to discuss. But between the building and the lake, the BZA's already ruled in. I think the model that Jason showed, which is beautiful, but I think it brings the rock way too close to the water. And so the first impression that I had when I looked at it is, we don't want that. We probably, the model was distracting to some of you because it looks like it's right at the edge of the water. It's not. It will be 15 feet back where the high water mark is. So what I would love it if you could comment on the buildings, because we need to put that stairway in. The current stairway is just unsafe. We can't get to the beach safely on that, and the beach shed will allow us to then take all the boats that Jason showed and store them over the winter. So that's a simple request of the planning board.
So question, as far as the building goes, how does the fill that we've been debating and talking about for the last 35-40 minutes, how does that impact the foundation of the building? Because I don't want to say to you, oh yeah, go ahead with the building, and then when that stuff's taken away, suddenly there may be issues that are design issues that might affect the the integrity or anything like that with that stone being removed.
It's not required. We're not using the fill to stabilize the foundation element at all.
Mm-hmm.
Just like the shed that's there, it was dropped on the beach. We're just going to build an elevated concrete raft basically to get out of the flood elevation and then construct upon that. So it'll be stabilized on the current shoreline.
And Rebecca, what how does that? Do you see any issues, other than the size of the building, which is really not
our purview?
It's not our
It's just-
purview. Other
it's about the-
than that, what do you see? Would that satisfy the concerns that you had if we were able to separate the building from that fill in front of it?
I think there's a bigger, more important issue about the legality of the way this is being tackled, with it being right within the wetland, which is the edge of the lake, right so close to it, and then requiring movement of materials, the substrate of the beach, which is the wetland, to allow the structure to be built, and the grading and movement of the material and the creation of some kind of wall or bulkhead, you can call it what you want, to hold that material in place. If I were you all, I would not be proceeding without finding out what the legality of this is. I'm intrigued that you're willing to move ahead. It may all work out in your favor, but it won't. I mean, I wouldn't be investing the money to build a whole structure this close to the lake edge when you may be violating state and federal laws. So that's the way I'm a cautious person. And right now it seems like you're in this situation. So you're asking me, I would not vote to support any more movement on this structure till we get the laws figured out. That's why we have Nathan. And we have access to DEC and we should get it figured out.
And Rebecca, to jump in, I think one of the things that absolutely, as a planning board member, you can vote whichever way you would like to. One of the things that I've seen many other boards do is condition their approval upon the permission of other agencies. So in this case, if there is some concern that another agency, like whether this is in violation of another state law, federal law, local law, whomever has a law or regulation that affects this, the approval, if you were to approve it, could be conditioned upon granting of that other approval. And so therefore, in this case, if it's a DEC issue or whomever, they would have to get that other approval in order for your approval to also be approved. I just want to say that very clearly, that is a pretty common type of example. Usually I see it in the example of stormwater pollution protection or prevention plans. SWIPs is what they're often called, where the DEC approves SWIPs. Lots of local agencies don't care to get in the details of those. They say, we'll approve it subject to the SWIP being approved. And so in this instance, the issues that you're mentioning, if they are subject to approval by another state or local agency and or are in violation of those state and local regulations, your approval can be contingent upon those.
Sounds like the way to go to me.
Except for, I think that it's our rules. It's not another, I mean, we have in our own rules that wall would not be able to be built. So,
Right.
so maybe we could approve just the building itself.
That's what he's asking.
Yeah.
I mean, and I would say, Rebecca, your concern was that the construction of the building, i.e. the foundation underneath it, requires movement of material.
It's part of it. Yep.
And I guess the counter to the argument to that, or the argument against that, would be there's an existing structure there, so it's not increasing the footprint.
No, they're going from 200 to 384 square feet. They are doubling the size of the building.
I understand that.
And doubling the height of the building, so the actual weight and surface area footprint is much, much larger. They will have to move a lot of material to allow the construction of the foundation for the building. There are alternatives. They could have proposed pillars, which is what they do in floodplains all the time, they're raised structures. And so there's water can move under and out underneath it. There's still substrate under there. That's not what's being proposed. It's a solid structure to the ground, except that it's a basement under there where things can be put in there, but they're putting a big concrete pad in. They're not putting in pillars. There are alternatives for flood zones. It's a big issue for sea level rise and river flooding. So there are there are alternatives available that were not being discussed.
So
we're happy to look at a pile foundation. My intention was that you build a what's called a raft foundation on the beach without disturbing it and build up from it. But we can drill and dig holes and put the piles into the beach and then elevate it up and let the flood water run under it. I mean, that's an option.
Look, I've lived on this beach for 70 years and the water's never come near to that high. This would be a 500-year flood to get the water even up to the edge of where we're proposing to put this building. But don't take my word for it. Let's get the DEC in there. We work with the DEC. We're religious about not moving one shovel of gravel without getting approval from them.
All right.
We promise we will do that. I heard a different concern from Rebecca, which is the size of the buildings. Again, the BZA reviewed those, but if the planning board decides on the size of the buildings, then that's what I would ask you to review and approve today so that we could move forward under the, thank you for the suggestion, under the conditions that nothing that we do in front of that building will be done without full DEC approval.
Well, it's not just the DEC though, it's our own laws as well, yeah. And just to answer your question about having built something similar 12 years ago, there, as we're learning more about wetlands and water setbacks and such, there have been new additions to the zoning law. So things that were allowed, and there were a lot of things that were allowed, are no longer allowed. So that's why things are changing.
And
Yeah, I guess I just want to add, I have a little confusion because John Zepko has told us nothing about anything related to the zoning law in this process. So we're just being blindsided a little, that's all. But I think what Mike's talking about is we can separate the two, and
Yeah.
we could also look at incurring flood insurance and lowering the elevation of the storage shed, but
I mean,
that's expensive, you know.
as far as like that pad, like when you put in that pad, you know, I guess my question is like, what kind of depth is it? You know, is it 18 inches into the ground? Is it?
He described it as a floating pad.
That's what I'm asking. What's the floating? What does it look like?
It's 2 feet.
It's 2 feet into the soil.
No. It could be a foot into the soil.
I see.
Yeah. So I take it back. It's a tough location. So it could be a foot into the soil and build up from there. And that stone we would dig out, we would just put in front. It wouldn't be very much. I mean, a 384 square foot footprint, it's not going to create a large pile of material, and we would just put it in front.
So one of the questions I guess I would ask for the planning board is, would you be more comfortable if the code enforcement officer, zoning enforcement officer provided a letter to the planning board saying very explicitly, this project meets the whatever the requirements are?
No, I will not be comfortable with that.
The reason Rebecca, I asked that is often in many instances with zoning and planning, the person whose responsibility it is to make those decisions is the code or zoning enforcement officer. It's not the planning board, individual members to make that decision.
Yes, but we're sitting here and here's an entire planning board who should know what they're doing. You as a lawyer, Jason, who's an architect, and none of you are quite clear on what either our own zoning rules are or the states or the federal run. And I'm sure as heck not going to expect a code enforcement officer to be familiar with it. We really need to get the facts straight about these rules, okay? Right. And therefore the code enforcement officer is not the person to turn to and say, all right, we'll rely on your expertise. I've been studying wetlands for 30 years. I did wetland delineation a long time ago, and I've forgotten most of it. There are very important regulations that need to be examined for their relevance to this particular site. I will not be comfortable until you and I have worked through this. And it could all be DC says, oh no, we've given up on Cayuga Lake. There's already so many houses there, go for it. I don't know, but I do think we need to figure this out.
I have a proposal, and that's to say that I really do appreciate your need, you know, and desire to have those stairs started, get the building project started. We are looking at a building that's going to be there, you know, hopefully for 60, 70 years. And I do think that there are outstanding questions about the legality of this much disturbance of the soil, you know, within that setback from a wetland, because you know, you have an existing building there, but you're not replacing it with an existing building that's anywhere near what the current building is. Like the footprint is larger and the weight is greater and the foundation is different. So I understand that you have the, you have the approval for the setback, and we're not arguing the setback. I think my biggest concern is the disruption by, put in that area. And I would like more clarity around what the laws are, what the legality of that is. And I feel that if we took 2 weeks to get some answers to that.
What
that
laws are you
would
talking
allow
about?
us- The zoning laws around.
Zoning laws are in our book.
Yes.
The
I know.
DEC wetland regulations and the Federal Army Corps of Engineers regulations concerning what is a legal wetland for a lake such as this, and what are the laws about what kind of construction, filling,
So, what
dredging,
we're
and
really
bulkhead
saying is
construction.
that
Those are
our
the laws.
zoning laws are not in consideration of the DEC laws? That our zoning laws permit things that DEC won't permit? Is that what we're saying, Rebecca?
No, what I'm looking at is, John, I'm looking at our zoning and I'm seeing, prohibited soil disturbance by, removal of soil, sand or gravel, filling. There's a lot here about, in our own zoning, about soil disturbance.
Well, are you quoting, if you can quote our zoning law that prohibits it, then we should do that. And the applicant should know that. Otherwise, I don't understand why we don't move ahead with as advised by our lawyer, with considerations. In other words, go ahead and approve the boathouse, which BZA has already approved, in a sense, and make it contingent. Anything else contingent upon clarification of what the rules are according to various agencies that is not clear to me who we're going to apply to, but I guess the DEC.
Yeah, and the
And
Army
then
Corps of
to
Engineers.
clarify, I think what John was saying, because we includes me, you folks have no authority to approve anything that's illegal, right? And so if something is not allowed by state law or federal law regarding this area, then regardless of what you approve or not, they can't do it. And so if I'll admit to not being 100% familiar with the intricacies of the town of Ulysses code regarding this particular project and the zoning requirements for it. But if there's some disconnect between what you allow locally versus what is allowed by state and federal law, the state and federal law will end up overriding you. And so if this project meets your local requirements, you could authorize the project contingent upon compliance with the state and the federal requirements, leaving those compliance issues to the state and federal authorities that happen to oversee those things. Rebecca, I hear what you're saying, and they're very valid concerns, and many of those things overlap with many of the local concerns, but I want to lay out very clearly, as much as I can anyway, what happens in many other places in upstate New York.
So, Nate, go ahead. Liz. Go ahead.
I think one of the things that, it would be great to have a letter from the DEC saying this is fine with us, that would be wonderful. Then we would be clear on it. But we still, I think there's still the issue of our own zoning law, which has little bits and pieces in it. And admittedly, they're sort of scattered about. And I think it's important for the planning board to see that as it's considering things. So, yeah, I wish that we could approve that building and then deal with the shore later, but, and perhaps we can, but I don't know, how would the conditional be, like that the building itself was approved, but no other land excavation or fill is allowed on the site? How would that until we can read our own zoning and make sure we're in compliance with our own zoning.
Liz, I think it would read that we, would approve the building as designed, and that, any alteration between the building and the waterfront would be contingent upon whatever applicable, whatever, DEC, Army Corps, that kind of thing. Like,
But it's not the DEC and Army Corps, it's our own zoning that
Right.
we need to be looking at.
So
He's right.
building with a contingent upon not disturbing the area in front of the building. I mean, that,
No, the whole building, he's gonna move 384 times 1 or 2 feet worth of soil, which is more than what our zoning currently allows within the wetland next to a waterway. So in order just to build the foundation, it will require moving substrate. That's soil, but it's not called soil right there. It's called
It's
substrate nonetheless.
actually not soil, it's scrubble. I'm a little confused, Elizabeth, because we spent, I think this was a month ago, we went to an organization called the BZA, and I assumed, and they approved this project. And I assume that the Z standard for zoning.
mhm.
So did they not have all the information you have about what the zoning requirements are?
No, I think they approved the building, but not the stone.
They only-
wall
They
and the
only
fill.
approved the setback.
So what if we approve the building and not the stuff between the building and the water? Because
That's not correct. The BZA only approved the location of the building within the setback. If you had that up on piles, none of this would be even relevant. So they don't have any say over the type of building or the foundation, just its location. And they approve that you could be allowed to put it with a structure within the setback. It's not their purview to assess what is the type of structure and whether it's legal or not. That's why it came to us. And right now, your structure has elements to it that go against our zoning, as Liz said, pieces of our zoning, which is in particular is the movement of the substrate, which would be necessary given your current design. It'll have to be excavation in order to get that material out to put in a foundation. That's not legal even in our jurisdiction. We should have stronger rules that fit the DEC guidelines. And that's what the other part of this is, the other piece. But altogether, the building's going to require movement of substrate. Jason just said that, and that's not allowed in our rules.
So I would propose that we table this for 2 weeks to provide an opportunity for Rebecca and whoever else or maybe 2 weeks is not enough time, to get a better sense of the legality of moving all the substrate to create that foundation. Because when you parse it, that the BZA approved the location, without necessarily knowing what kind of design was going into it to like move all the substrate to create that building. I think there are outstanding questions about the legality given the point that Rebecca just made. So I would accept a motion to table it.
I made a motion a while ago to table it.
All right. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. That was like 35 minutes.
Oh, just one other thing, Rebecca, if you look at 21248, design standards, there's a lot in there from the town of Ulysses about the lakefront area, and that might help a little bit.
Thank
But
you.
my motion stands.
All right. I would accept a second on that motion.
Second,
All in favor of tabling while we gather additional information? Aye. Did I hear people?
John?
Nay,
Okay.
nay,
And here's an aye.
I'm an aye.
And I'm not sure if I'm allowed to vote. Rodney left. Do you have enough votes? Am I voting or am I not voting?
We have.
here you can.
We do have enough, but you can.
Oh, okay. I will vote to table it also.
Okay. All right. Maria, are you clear on the yays and the nays?
Would you recapitulate that, please?
I just asked Maria if she was clear on the yays and the nays. I think
I'm
you were,
sorry. I missed who the nay was.
it was John Wordis.
Okay,
Okay.
now I am.
And the action item is that I will work with Nathan and the appropriate people at DEC and the federal government to figure out what the regulations are about moving fill, including our own Ulysses law, moving and dredging and filling substrate within this zone and putting up any kind of bulkhead structure in that area. Now, I will do my best. I have my own responsibilities at Cornell and for several conferences I'm presenting at in the next 3 weeks, but I will do my best to have this done with Nathan. I don't know your schedule as well, but I'll do what I can to work with you in the next 2 weeks.
And yeah, and yeah, and Rebecca, we will look for that information at the next planning board meeting, but I don't know when that will be. Okay.
My computer's about to shut down and I can't control it. Yes, I will do something. I'll be back in a couple minutes when it turns back
All
on.
right, well, we're going to adjourn.
I object to having a planning board member designated to gather information. The town should be doing that. Either the chairman or the professional staff. Nonsense to operate this way, where we tell a planning board member to go out and gather information about a document that we should be able to work with.
Point noted, John. Good point. All right.
I'm happy to help Nathan, who is a town employee, do it because it is my area of expertise and I feel like I can provide informed information about what we find, as opposed to some others who have less experience.
To John's point, I think the most pertinent person to ask this question of is actually your code/zoning enforcement officer, because whomever that is the person responsible for always reviewing applications and providing information to the zoning and the planning boards about the relevant laws that apply to a particular application and stating, is this law, or excuse me, is this application in compliance with whatever laws that there may or may not be relevant to it. And so I think, John, to your point, you're insofar as you take issue with Rebecca being a person who happens to be communicating with whomever it might be, the person is John and the code enforcement officer. I will communicate with them insofar as Rebecca has really relevant background and information as to relevant places and people to talk to. For that, I think we'll probably have some discussions. And my hope is that by the next planning board meeting, there will be answers.
When is the next planning board meeting?
I want to look at what applications we have forthcoming.
Well, we have a schedule, a published schedule of planning board meetings, which is essentially once a month through 2022.
Our next planning board meeting
is that if we want to, we can schedule other planning board meetings in order to move things along, but they would have to be publicized. A public notice would have to be put in the paper. So what are we telling the applicant? That they wait for a month or they wait for 2 weeks?
So I'm willing to, I mean, applicant, I understand that you have, a project that you're trying to get rolling. I mean, I'm in favor of doing a meeting in 2 weeks. However, I want to be able to gather the pertinent information. And I'm not sure exactly how long that will take. So
maybe we should just put a whole moratorium on any building projects in the town of Ulysses until we have a planning officer.
That is a town board action.
That's my only concern about the 2 week limit is we're now going to be asking information from DC, who's seriously understaffed, as well as Army Corps, and everybody's moving slowly. I'll do my best to get people to respond to us, but they may say, look, get in line. I'm hoping 2 weeks is enough time, but I can't promise it's that's out of my control.
All right. Sounds good. So our next meeting is scheduled for the 7th. However, if we have pertinent information, within enough time to publish an earlier meeting, like notify the public of an earlier meeting, we could schedule an earlier meeting. And that would be the 17th if we had information that was useful by then. I mean, that would be ideal.
Our best.
Yeah, okay.
I'll make
All
a
right.
motion to adjourn.
All right, second that motion.
Thank
I
you.
bet you
Thank you,
do.
guys.
Thank you, everybody.
And I appreciate everything you guys do. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. All right, thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.